so it's already showing on YouTube, and give me a moment and I will, yeah, and it's going. Sorry about that. I shouldn't let myself get so distracted. And I didn't shut that down immediately. Never mind. Okay, right. In a moment, Malcolm will be joining me. For those of you who don't know, there's a live stream discussion between us from about 8 o'clock, which is in 3 minutes, on the James Bond film, The Spy Who Loved Me. And it's a bit of a spoiler here. It's my favorite Bond film. So if you have any opinions about it, and I don't mind if you're not keen on it, but if you've anything you want to add or to ask Malcolm or myself, please feel free. And yes, it's all good. There are other Bond films I love, but this was, I think, the first one I saw. It was the earliest James Bond memory I have was the Lotus going into the water. And to me, looking at it even more maturely years later, it has everything I like about a Bond film, or nearly everything, is in that film. Of course, there are things I don't like about Bond films that are in there, but it's where it hit the right notes. It really hit the right notes, and on that basis, I think it's a great film. There are others I love: GoldenEye, On Her Majesty's Secret Service, From Russia with Love, which is my favourite Sean Connery film, Living Daylights. And yes, I do have a sneaking love for Moonraker, and it is in my top 10. And there's also 2 of the Daniel Craig ones, Casino Royale and Skyfall. The stereotypical ones that are widely disliked. I perhaps don't like some I don't have such a dislike of. Although the 60-some version of Casino Royale is bottom of any Bond list, I would do. And Malcolm will be here at any moment. So obviously, hope you can bear with my inane chatter for a short while. I've had the first one I've done with my haircut, which is very good. I was getting a bit fed up with seeing sort of a large barnet of hair due to the lockdown. But of course, a lot of the greys are showing, but that's when what comes of being in your 40s. Yes, so hopefully this will be an interesting discussion. We discussed, by the way, the other week, a few weeks ago, Malcolm's favourite Bond film, Licence to Kill, which if you're watching this on my blog, which for those of you aren't, it's at Paul Bergin, PaulBurgin.blogspot.com. There's a link to our Licence to Kill discussion. On YouTube, you can just look on my page and you'll find it soon enough. But and I do like Licence to Kill, but it is fairly down on my list because it doesn't have that feel of a Bond film, and that does get to me. But hopefully, we'll see how it goes with this. And again, any questions, anything you want to say, do let me know, and let Malcolm know, whether it's to ask us questions or to join in. And here is Malcolm. And good evening, Mr. Mann. How are you?
Hello.
Expecting you. So I couldn't resist. How's things?
Things are very well. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfectly.
None of the trouble of last time.
Yeah, I remember we had to sort of shut down and start all over again quickly, but
yeah,
everyone has these blips from time to time. So
technology.
Yes. So everything else okay?
All is well here, thank you. Yeah. Indoors today, staying well away from any rainy weather.
Oh yeah.
I got caught the other day. Not pleasant.
No.
Just getting on with the work and writing. I've started writing a book again For anyone who doesn't know, which is most people, I have a habit of starting and never finishing. So I don't know where this will go, if anywhere, but at least I'm actually doing something
Yes.
rather than just daydreaming. So I'm happy about that.
It's always good to put within reason to put ideas onto page, I find. So yeah. So The Spy Who Loved Me. You did say you'd almost have to watch that last minute. What did you? I'm assuming you've seen it before.
A long time ago, yeah.
Yeah. What was it like watching it this time?
It was a good experience. I think a number of thoughts or emotions that I came away with. I think I'll put one out there. Perhaps controversial, I'm not sure. The naivety of the storyline, of the storytelling as compared to a more modern or contemporary Bond film.
Yes.
The plot was enjoyable, which is what I guess as a Bond film it needs to be, all that it needs to be. But it was so paper thin. And I was thinking while I was watching it, well, where do all the guards come from? How does he get them involved? And how did he build this sea city? And what exactly is his plan for a world or life under the sea? Now, I appreciate that, it's a Bond film. You're not supposed to think about those things too much, or if at all. It's not really about Atlantis or anything else. It's about what James Bond does to stop it. But me personally, I always want to know more about the behind the scenes stuff. And I justify this by saying to myself that it shouldn't be just about James Bond. They're world building here, and they should be taken into account these practical things of where I presumably they're mercenaries, the guards come from, and how the guy's able to get the resources together to steal not one but 3 nuclear submarines, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Now I have to stress that it didn't stop me enjoying the film, but it was a thought that I had during it, and it's not really gone away since.
It's one of those thoughts where it doesn't just apply to The Spy Who Loved Me, though, does it? It applies to several Bond films.
Sure.
The bigger and more extravagant and better. I mean, how on earth? I love Moonraker, for example. Don't get me wrong. It's my guilty pleasure, as it were. Part of it's because it's one of the first Bond films I saw.
Yeah.
But how does Drax build a space station, even making allowances for the radar jamming system? How does he even begin to build one in space without the global powers noticing? I mean, at the very least, a strong telescope would point out this.
Yeah. They would have to know about it and acquiesce to it. And if I was writing a follow-up to this, if they said to me, write a realistic follow-up, I would say that he was building it for a different purpose, and behind the scenes was adjusting things so that his real purpose could be fulfilled.
But the trouble was when they got rid of the radar jamming system, everyone was like, "Oh, what on earth is this?" Unless it was meant to be for a temporary thing, and people weren't aware of that. But yeah, that's a whole new ball game. But you are right. It is a wafer thing in The Spy Who Loved Me. How you build such a tanker, how you get so many people involved, what kind of underwater world, and how would you get an underwater world from firing off 2 nuclear missiles? If it was about melting the polar ice caps, and a plot around that for an underwater world, that would make more sense. Just firing off some nuclear missiles is quite something else. But I feel bad because I have been on record already this evening and before by saying, I mean, just as License to Kill is with you, this is my favourite Bond film. So I'm already partly dissing it myself.
You see, that's what you can do when one likes a film or a book or whatever so much. It becomes, in a sense, easier to criticize because you're still going to love it afterwards, despite its flaws. Same with people. one can love a person despite their flaws, or even
Yeah.
love them in their flaws.
Oh,
It's a blessed position to be in, I think.
Mm. I mean, it's a very. I mean, and there's some very iconic scenes in that film.
Yeah. Now, one of them I want to ask about
Right.
when Stromberg says to Bond, I've been expecting you." Is that where the phrase comes from, or is it said in any other Bond pictures?
Do you know, having seen every single Bond film apart from No Time to Die, which I've seen,
Yeah.
and almost knowing, and this is bad, knowing a lot of the dialogue off the top of my head in most of the Bond films,
Right.
from having seen them enough times.
Wow.
And it's just this what it's more sad because it shows how often you watch them. But it's I don't know. I honestly don't know. I wouldn't be surprised either way whether that's the only time we've heard that. No, it is mentioned in the Diamonds Are Forever, just before
Okay.
Bond sees Blofeld when he thinks he's still Willard. It's still Willard White. Good
Right.
evening, sir. We've been expecting you. I can't
Okay.
do the. I'd have to stop and pause before trying to do an impression like that again. But yeah, it is, but it has become a cliche, hasn't it? Like a lot of things,
Yeah.
and it adds to my sense that Bond. It would add to my usual argument that Bond villains are very nice people. They always show Bond where they live, what their plans are, and then but of course they're sociopathic monsters. But in this one, Stromberg isn't really all that polite, is he? It's like after once he knows who Bond is, he doesn't bother. I mean, he has the courtesy of telling him what his plans are, but he doesn't exactly show him round.
On the one hand, he is polite in that when he believes Bond to be the marine biologist, he invites him
Yes.
onto his base.
Yes.
But then once he gets there, on the other hand,
Yeah.
the encounter's pretty brief, and so, well, what was the point of meeting
And
the
it's
guy then, taking the time to meet him if you're
after
just
all
going to
such an
dismiss him?
effort. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, he invites Bond to sit down at his table, but then obviously tries to shoot him.
And there's a very real life accident happened there because
Oh,
Roger Moore didn't. He said, should I sit in on the chair or should I stand?" Oh, it'd be good. I'll sit in front. And as he said in an interview on, I remember years later as a teenager when he mentioned it on Wogan, he said, "Idiots Moore didn't think it through," and. Of course, you can see it's actually Roger Moore moving. I think in the actual film, it's moving. His backside caught some of the explosion,
right.
so he had to have some medical attention
Oh dear. Yeah,
for
yeah.
that. But you know, I think apart from a few bruises, he was fine. But that was the closest he came to actual really bad injury and or anything like that in the films.
Yeah,
Behind the scenes. And there's us always making fun of the fact that the older he gets, the more stuntmen you see. But
yeah.
it's the chase scene you referring to afterwards. I mean that is longer than the meeting with Stromberg, but that I think is one of the best chase scenes in the Bond films. And I don't know what it is. Maybe it's literally the motorbike, car, and helicopter. So you got three different ones, or four if you include once underwater and having all these men in scuba diving gear chasing after them. But I think it's also the Marvin Hamlish's score and the chief one in that Bond 77. And I think there's this brilliant moment in the film where uh, when after the second Bond staves off the second load with the Ford Cortina with Jaws with the
Yeah.
splurge at the back of the Lotus, and then there's no music and it's just the sound of the car, and then you hear the machine gun. And I saw something in research for this that I've never seen before, never noticed. The first gunfire from Naomi in the helicopter, and a road sign comes off in the gunfire. It's literally blown off by the bullets,
right.
which is quite something. But it's that bit where that happens, and then it's like, and then Bond going, ever get the feeling somebody doesn't like you? And as he drives, and then the score comes in again, but this time with strings, and then you see the helicopter, and you see it's Naomi, and the fact that she just smiles and winks at him, and
when I watched that, I thought, would he actually be able to see that or not? Again,
this
is
actually
another overthinking Bond moment. But
it is more for the audience's benefit. He'd probably just about work out it's a woman, but not necessarily Naomi.
Yeah.
But it's a pity we don't see more of her. We don't see enough dangerous femme fatales in the Roger Moore era than we do perhaps in the Connery or era, or even Pierce Brosnan.
They had a very good opportunity with Agent Triple X. What a code name to have there. But I think she was rather, well, I was going to say underused, but she does get the better of Bond once or twice along the way. She ends up tied to Stromberg's chair, not doing very much. But prior to that, she's clearly something approaching his equal.
Yeah, I do. And my favorite, sorry. I end up the thought tangent. I have to stop myself and suddenly go, I find my favorite Bond girls are the ones who are pretty much Bond's equal in some way.
Sure.
And whether that's Tracy in On Her Majesty's Secret Service, or Holly Goodhead in Moonraker, and especially the recent ones. I did like is it Natalia Simonova in GoldenEye?
Oh, you see, I was all about Xenia on the top.
Yeah, and Wayland. Oh yeah, a lot of the Xenia on the top is one of the best Bond villainesses. I do see a lot of similarity between her and Fatima Blush in the hybrid Bond film Never Say Never Again.
Right.
But she is terrifying, isn't she? You would never...
Who's Xenia or
Xenia or Fatima? You would never want to be left alone with them because they'd kill you at the first opportunity.
This is true, but she's very sexy.
So... Well, she always did enjoy a good squeeze.
Well, yeah, there is that. But yeah, you're right. But they are great supervillains. Well, supervillains of a type, not Marvel superish.
No.
It was interesting though, going to what you said a second ago, to get the reference to Tracy Bond in the film. I love the continuity whenever it crops up, which in old Bond films is not very often. So to get a little mention there, that was quite neat. I enjoyed that moment. But to go back to the music, good score, very influenced by its age, the disco effect. The disco influence there was very, well, I guess very obvious. At the time, it would have been just up-to-date music, I guess. But hearing the Lawrence of Arabia music theme, when Bond's crossing the desert, I mean, I'm very interested in T. Lawrence.
Yes.
So when I realised, hold on, they're playing the Lawrence of Arabia music, although I'm not a massive fan of the actual film, it was nice to hear that. And then afterwards, I began thinking about it again. I thought, well, I wish it hadn't made it quite so obvious, because I felt it demeaned Bond a little by paying such an obvious homage to another film, as if Lawrence of Arabia is the senior picture and here's the youngster coming up behind it, currying favour almost by repeating what it was doing. I would have liked it if it had been a bit more subtle, but that just goes in my pile of changes, minor and major, that I would have made with this film myself.
I do find the humour in The Spy Let Me Know is more subtle than in Moonraker. In Moonraker, I don't know if it's my mind playing tricks on me, but the jokes like that almost like nearly every single scene, you you see some kind of humor along those lines. But otherwise, yeah, in this one, yeah.
The jokes are subtle to a point. But I really appreciated the Egyptian location for the story. I'm very interested in ancient Egypt, or elements of ancient Egypt. So, and of course, one of my most favorite films is The English Patient, which is predominantly set there. So anytime a movie goes to Egypt, really appreciated.
Isn't it in Luxor, the scene that between
so.
Bond, Jaws, and Anya?
I really, in my memory, I had misremembered them a little. That in my memory, Bond spent more time diving between the huge colossal pillars, but I still really liked that part of the story, the time that we got, even if it could have been longer, or I wish it had been longer. Seeing the locations, it's like whenever Bond goes to Italy. Italy is just so gorgeous. It's just one half of my brain watches the story, the other's just falling in love with Italy again. And Egypt, it was a little bit like that, going through the desert, Luxor or Karnak. I know, I think you're right. I think it's Luxor. And then,
I know Death on the Nile, part of that was filmed at Luxor, from what I read.
right.
And that scene, it was at the same place where part of Death on the Nile was filmed the following year.
Okay. Yeah.
When you see a big boulder being held there, nearly killing the eventual victim, Lynette, who incidentally was played by Lois Charles, who is the Bond girl in Moonraker.
Right.
But yeah, it is, yeah.
It's just gorgeous, and I like the way they did it with the huge audience, or the big audience watching the presentation. Kind of reminded me of Quantum of Solace at the opera. This great big, very dramatic location. Here it's utilizing history. In Quantum of Solace, it was utilizing the opera, and then Bond moving in the shadows in both places. Although I guess he was a bit more in the open, at least for a short while. But that was an interesting way to do the same thing twice, essentially, but with a different twist, so that they don't become repetitious.
Yes.
Nice touch. I hadn't thought of that till this moment.
No, never have I. It never occurred to me.
But it was a pleasure seeing Jaws. And again, after I haven't seen him in a Bond film for so long, probably since whenever he last appeared when I was growing up. I have to admit, I did think I was going to put this on Twitter, but I decided against it in the end. I did wonder, because I watched the video on the braces issue.
Yes.
The girl who wears the braces.
She didn't know. That's an urban myth.
Yeah, apparently. Calvin Dyson's video.
Yes.
That's the one.
Yes, we owe Kelvin a lot. If you're Kelvin, you've made us rethink some of what how we look at Bond films, and certainly we spot things as a result. And
although I'm still haven't been brave enough to go off on a tangent for a moment, to watch his video comparing the film and television versions of Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy.
Oh, do that.
Well, seriously, I don't want to do that and find he comes out in favor of the film, because then I might not have to talk to him ever again. I'm
sure that's not the case, but
good too. But the film is nothing on the TV series.
You prefer the TV series?
I don't just prefer it. I will fight anyone who says the film. I won't fight them, but yes, I do prefer it very much.
I suggest, having watched Kelvin's review and taking fully into account what you've just said, that you do watch it, because you may find yourself quite pleasantly surprised by some of what Kelvin has to say. But definitely. It's lost my train of thought now. Anyway, let's move on to one to other things, and then hopefully my train of thought will come back. The other iconic thing is that the opening scene, which really does set the tone. I mean, it's mentioned so often. I mean, there was a whole Alan Partridge monologue about the first 7 minutes of The Spy Who Loved Me. You get the 2 nuclear submarines missing. Moscow is alerted. Anya's called off, and Bond's alert. London's alerted. Bond's called up. Turns out that the Anya's lover, who you saw 2 or 3 scenes ago, is one of the group of assassins sent to kill Bond. Bond kills him, and so you got the beginnings of the serious subtext of Bond's, the tension that will exist between Bond and Anna. But then you've got that really iconic stunt, which I think is just about the best stunt in the whole series, where he got the gunman chasing him in the skis, and then the music builds up, and then silences. He's over the cliff.
Yeah.
Kicks off the skis and then opens the parachute.
Union Jack. Now, when I was at university, the Bond film GoldenEye came out. Right. And a whole gang of us went to see it at the cinema. And of course, there was this stunt at the beginning with Bond, which I'm nowhere near as much of a fan of. I love GoldenEye. It's my number 2 on my list. But that
below The Spy Who Loved Me. But if I have one big criticism of the film, it's this stunt, because
do you mean the bungee jump?
Not the bungee. No, the bungee jump's brilliant. I won't say anything bad about the bungee jump. It's the motorbike and the plane.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Because it breaks every law of physics that there is. I know you could argue that a number of things do that. For example, if rockets went off in the volcano layer and you only live twice, the whole inside would be burnt out. Yeah. So I'm aware of all this, but for some reason, this one bugs me.
Right.
I can lay aside objective reality on a number of things. This one bugs me. Bond chasing after on a motorbike and somehow managing to go faster than a plane and pull it up. But that's beside the point. When I saw this at the cinema, everyone got up and clapped and applauded. This stuff. I'm told, I've read from several sources, that is what happened at the premiere of The Spy Who Loved Me, at the royal premiere, and apparently even Prince Charles stood up. When the Union Jack opens after the, and yeah. It's difficult to explain why it's such a wonderful stunt. It's not the best stunt in cinematic history, I will grant you that. It might not even be the most dangerous stunt in cinematic history, although God knows Rick Sylvester was nervous about it, not because of the jump itself or the parachute. He was worried that one of the skis could land on the parachute, and if that happened, there was nothing he would be able to do about it. In fact, one of them did glance off the parachute. But obviously, if one of them landed on the parachute, there was a very real risk it would rip open, and that was it.
Right.
So he was really scared that would happen. And obviously, like any stunts like that, they delayed filming by 2 or 3 weeks because of all the wind, blur, and everything like that. So when he did it and it glanced up, so I mean, it was in many ways dangerous, and no, perhaps not the most dangerous. But I think for me, it's the Union Jack that does it. It's a brilliant stunt all on its own, and it would be high above there. But the Union Jack is the icing on the cake, I think.
Well, it elevates it beyond being a mere stunt, because it introduces the idea of patriotism.
Yes.
And that opens up all kinds of emotions, hopefully positive ones, clearly in this case. And of course,
they should have
by the music or the lack of music.
I was going to say, I do not misunderstand me. I love Marvin Hamlish's score. I think it's one of the best scores in the whole series. Carly Simon's "Nobody Does It Better." That is way into my top 10 of favorite Bond themes. It probably is number 1 actually, if I stop talking about it. But I was just thinking this moment that the part of me that likes that kind of humour, it would have been lovely if the Bond it opened the Union Jack bit there and a track by Queen opened. Because it would add to that sort of camp pomposity that, you know.
I wonder if the reason you're not so fond of the GoldenEye motorbike scene is because perhaps it belongs in an older Bond film rather than a modern one.
What the
modern
Spy Love Me
films,
did it?
they do try to keep within the realms of believability, whereas the older films aren't so fussed by that. That could be a reason. It's just perhaps it feels a bit out of place.
Possibly. I mean, GoldenEye, one of the reasons I know I like GoldenEye, and I liked it at the cinema and I like it now, is that it hit all the Bond marks again after several years. And there had been a 6-year gap. But both The Spy Who Loved Me and GoldenEye, it was just like here's the formula, we're going to follow that precisely, and then some more. And they worked hard. I think we're both have in common is they worked hard at every single tiny aspect of the film and made it great. The music on GoldenEye, they could have done better with the score. Although I do, funnily enough, I am in the minority of this. I do like Eric Sears' score in the pre-title sequence as a concert. That type of sort of industrialized kind of thing.
Yeah.
About all the film, I do find a little bit grating. It could have done with some David Arnold, but
always do with some of his music.
Yeah, or even John Barry. I do miss John Barry. In his music in Bond, and I do wish that things were, as much as I like David Arnold, things were where he could have kept going all the way through to Quantum of Solace. But at the same time, they did well with the music. To an extent, they did music in GoldenEye, but I will give more credit to Bono and the Edge on that.
Right.
They got it right on the part, not just the characters and the parts. They got the right actors. They gave it a high stakes, but within a certain realm, and they did some good stunts. And GoldenEye was Pierce Brosnan's first Bond film. In some respects, The Spy Who Loved Me does almost feel like a first Bond film for an actor. I mean, Roger Moore really hits his stride, I think, in this one.
It does feel a very fresh film.
Yes.
When you watch it, when I watched it,
yes,
it's his third picture, but
yes, it is.
It doesn't feel tired, or he doesn't look tired in the role. I could have easily seen that as the first Roger Moore film.
Yes.
Sure.
I mean, he doesn't quite get it in Live and Let Die, and especially, I think, he doesn't get it in The Man with the Golden Gun. Whether it's Guy Hamilton is not a favourite director of mine in Bond. I mean, there are good moments in those films, but I find he doesn't gel with me. Lewis Gilbert does, and maybe that's partly something to do with it.
What really helps the film is like you were saying, it meets its marks.
Yeah,
we want comedy, we want action, we want ruthlessness. I'll come back to that in a second. We want something, the twist. We want a twist to make it a bit different.
Yeah,
it doesn't get more twisty than Britain and Russia coming together. We want a strong Bond girl. Well, he's not really a strong villain. I think there are better.
I've heard that before.
But what Stromberg lacks, Jaws more than makes up. And their writers, they say, "Okay, boss, we're on it," and they got it. They did it, and I think that's why it is such a fresh looking film.
I don't know where they went wrong with the villain. I mean, Kurt Jurgens was a very good actor.
Well, it's because I think because the story is so wafer thin. They simply don't give him enough to do. Right, you've got to
Michael Lonsdale
look old, look distinguished, say you're fed up with the world, and that's pretty much it. He's got he's got no real personality. They have opportunities. He takes I've forgotten her name. Anya.
Yes.
He takes Anya. Why? Well, it looks like he's just a dirty old man tying her to the chair.
Yeah.
But there's more.
I do get that.
They could have done more there as to why he would be so interested in her beyond just sex. It demeans his character a bit. The way they handled that. He should have done more. He's clearly cultured because he's got. You can see all the classical paintings on the wall, the music earlier on. So he's a sociopath. He's psychopathic, but he is cultured. Why not go into that a little bit? But it doesn't fit the Bond mold. Or at that point, it didn't fit it. It's a shame, a wasted opportunity. So he's got a great name, Stromberg, but character doesn't really live up to it, unfortunately. But yeah. Luckily, we've got Jaws, who is simply unkillable several times over. It's amazing how he keeps surviving. Very pleasant as well, because he's such a great character.
I mean, the thing is, Jaws in the Spy. I think there are two things you mentioned that I think are worth dwelling on. Jaws in The Spy Who Loved Me has his comedy moments, but the Jaws in The Spy and Jaws in Moonraker has his moments of sheer cold fear and ruthlessness. But Jaws in The Spy Who Loved Me and Jaws in Moonraker are in some respects different Bond henchmen. Jaws in Moonraker, as has been mentioned by various others, including David Zawitsky and Kelvin Dyson, it does feel like Roadrunner versus Wile E. Coyote in Moonraker. I mean, the bit where, the boat chase in the Amazon and Bond goes over and it's the Jaws like... kind of thing. And... it is like that, and you do have those moments of comedy of Jaws, like when he clearly can't understand what Drax is saying in the space station. Kind of look. There's a lot of facial comedy in Moonraker, and there's a lot of comedy. Although they have those kind of things. Spy Who Loved Me, you do get the brutality of it. I think the only comedy I remember in The Spy Who Loved Me, the moment with Jaws, I'm sure there was when he, aside from the clang that you hear when Bond hits him, was when he lifts up brain is failing me at this time of evening, a large stone, when the van drives off, and then he drops it. It's when he hits his foot. So they're two different Jaws. I mean, with the villains, you are right with Stromberg, but Michael Lonsdale in Moonraker as Drax had more. He had more going. I think he had a similar lack of characteristic, but he did a lot by doing very little.
Right.
And I don't know what it was, because Kurt Jurgens is a very good actor. Michael Lonsdale was a very good actor. So is Michael Lonsdale. God bless him. He left us not so long ago. And both are actually in Smiley's People, the sequel to Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy series. Yeah, both.
Who did Lonsdale play?
Sorry?
Who did Lonsdale?
He played the Russian person who Smiley traps at the end.
Carla.
He didn't have his beard. He was clean shaven.
That was Patrick Stewart, wasn't it?
No, that's Carla.
Yeah.
He used Michael Lonsdale's character to get to Carla.
Oh, I need to watch it again.
You do.
And Kurt Jurgens was in it.
He was in the first episode, and it was his last on-screen appearance, because it was shown in October.
Ooh, was he the general?
He was the general.
Oh, yeah.
In the first episode.
I have been to Hampstead Heath to walk along the path.
Where he gets
He was killed, and I've seen the not the barn,
the shed.
It's not even a shed now.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, where they marked it with the gold, with the yellow chalk, and there is actually a chalk mark there, and a drawing pin in it. Where there was when I went there. And
I'm sure a number of fans have deliberately walked past. And
yeah, I imagine.
Yeah.
I must go back up there sometime, and I bet you any money there'll still be a drawing pin in it. But yeah, oh gosh, he played the general.
Yeah, and it was sadly his last on-screen appearance, because it was shown in October '82, and he had died of a heart attack the previous June.
Right.
And so I imagine, given the length of the series, it was filmed in late '81 or early '82.
Right. Yeah.
Probably late '81, given the number of episodes and filming. But
I must, before I forget again, say something about ruthlessness, because when I was going through the different markers a few minutes ago, it reminded me one of the what was for me most powerful scenes in the film, because I look at Roger Moore's Bond as the comic Bond.
Yes.
And I don't really expect him to be that quite much of a hard nut.
No.
But then there was the scene where he's got the guy at the precipice of the cliff.
Yeah, on top of the building.
The building. Yeah.
Building, yeah.
Okay, on the building, and
he does something similar on the cliff edge in Fiore's Only, but we'll go that. But yeah,
anyway, yeah. But here he's got him by the guy's holding the tie. Bond gets the information he wants, and falls down to his death. And I was watching and thinking, blimey, Roger Moore's Bond, a bit more ruthless than I remembered. And of course, you're right. I think they're in a car and he pushes that off. So yeah, he had his moments.
I do regard Roger Moore as one of the most ruthless of the Bonds, actually, and one of the most cold of the Bonds. I think there are a lot of Bond myths. We tend to think that the coldness and the brutality are more of a staple of the early Connery films and of Timothy Dalton, Daniel Craig.
Yeah.
Roger Moore's Bond, when he's ruthless, he shows no emotion and no regret. And when he does
Roger Moore, did you say?
Roger Moore, yeah. When he does it, he shows no emotion, no regret. You don't see much. In attention, you do get moments of humanity with Roger Moore's Bond. I mean, as we see in The Spy Who Loved Me, as you yourself mentioned, when his late wife is mentioned.
Yeah.
And you see that reflected again in the beginning of Fiore's Only, when he lays flowers on her grave. And I do, in an alternative universe somewhere, I'm sure Roger Moore did on Her Majesty's Secret Service, and it would be one, you wonder, because I do think that would have been an amazing performance, seeing Roger Moore in that one. Everyone mentions, what if Connery was in On Her Majesty's Secret Service? I think if another actor is born, I think Lazenby was the best one for that film. But I think if Roger Moore, if you want to put another Bond in that one, I'd love to have seen Roger Moore in that. Right. But you do get those emotions with Bond. But I think his Bond killed more people than any of the others.
Right, okay.
That includes the casual mass murder of people when enemy buildings blow up and stuff like that. But
yeah.
He is in some respects, I regard him as a brutal Bond. Charming Bond, one of the most charming, and don't get me wrong, one of the most humorous.
Yeah.
But he is one of the most.
That makes him even more ruthless, or come across as even more ruthless, because he can be so charming as well.
Yes.
Whereas where you stand with Daniel Craig, if you're his enemy, you're going to get a pasting, and that's that. So with Roger Moore, you'd think he'd stand a chance. He might actually cut you a break, but
no, I don't. I wouldn't. If I were on the receiving end of Roger Moore's Bond, I would not expect mercy, given what And he had probably not only that. I mean, could you imagine being violently killed by someone who then makes a sardonic quip afterwards?
I know, that's just rubbing salt into the injury, really.
Yeah,
Just no call for it.
I know. It's a dead end situation.
But I see where you're going there.
I know. I'm bad with puns. I even find some come out. One of the best alternative puns I think I heard that could have been not my invention, but something was Moonraker, where he says to Drax, "Take a giant leap for mankind" as he pushes him into the airlock, and then Holly Goodhead turns up because where's Drax? He was like, "Well, he had to fly," and someone suggested he should have said, "Oh, he needed some space." So.
Oh. That's terrible. I'm going to steal that, but it's still terrible. Love it. Needed some space. Yeah, no, fair play. That is actually terrible and really, really good.
I think one I had was there's I did say something once occurred to me of Jaws being an electrifying fight in the train, because of course that. But yeah, I do. They're better at puns than I am, I think.
Well, I mean, they probably went through several drafts.
Yes, but apparently the script did. The script did go through several drafts. It went. There was a lot of. I mean, for hitting the right notes, it was a long and difficult journey to make this film. First of all, Harry Saltzman's finances or the whole financial environment around Harry Saltzman, let's put it that way, was in a precarious situation. And it meant that he had to sell his shares with Eon. I don't think his relationship with Cubby Broccoli, his professional relationship, was that good towards the end.
Right.
But The Man with the Golden Gun was the end of an era. And I do find, just as an aside, I do find the Bond up to Dalton, they're two people always go Connery era more. There is one era that seems to be Dr. No to The Man with the Golden Gun in terms of sort of films, and there's another one, The Spy Loved Me to License to Kill. It's like a different feel. I can't put my finger on it, but there's a different feel from, and the split seems squarely between The Man with the Golden Gun and The Spy Loved Me.
Yeah.
Me. And I think also what the different camera angles, like there's different camera thing for the shots of The Spy Loved Me. I forgot which one, whether it's tube or whatever. I'm not that proficient on knowing such things. So, but I think that had some. But they had that. They went through difficulties in getting a director. Even John Landis apparently was considered. There was they went through a whole load of scripts. They had also brought in people like Anthony Burgess and others, and they just didn't get it. Cubby Broccoli said in his memoirs that they ended up editing a whole load of scripts together. With they did that. They did an excellent job. But in the process of all of that, instead of the usual 18 months as it was with the previous Bond, in between the previous Bond films, it went through it was even more than 2 years. It was 2.5 years, which I think the only time there had been a gap like that before was between You Only Live Twice and On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Right.
Of course, now we're used to much larger gaps of 3, 4, 5 years. But,
What's the gap between Spectre and No Time to Die now?
It's coming in, we're in our 6th year.
6?
6th year.
Really? Wow.
It's roughly... If you take away about 4 or 5 months, roughly, again, I'd have to think about exact release dates. But if you take roughly, let's say 4 or 5 months, you've got the same gap as between License to Kill and GoldenEye, which to date is the biggest gap. This one will be a slightly narrower gap, but it's still a gap. Although, to be fair, there's the mitigating circumstance.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Still, gosh, no wonder it feels a long time.
But the Spy Who Loved Me, they had that. They had problems with the script, and yet I mean, one side was Roger Moore found that he had a bit more time on his hands and he nearly got a role in the film A Bridge Too Far.
Right.
And he initially turned it down because the chance to be in that, because he thought he'd be filming Spy Love Me. When he found there's delay, Richard Attenborough, the director, said, "Well, there's a part still open, which is Lieutenant General, which is Sir Brian Horrocks." But Horrocks was still alive then, and Horrocks got to have first refusal of any actor. And apparently he did not want Roger Moore. He didn't think Roger Moore was the right person to play him, so Edward Fox played him in the film. But I'm one of these film fans who's a little bit miffed about Brian Horrocks' suggestion. I mean, fair play to him. You know, if you don't want a certain actor to play you, that's your judgment, your call. And, you know, I mean, I could imagine, I think you and I could both imagine if we're famous, there's some actors we would not want to play us for whatever reason. But I'm a tiny bit miffed about this because Sean Connery was in the film. And even though their characters wouldn't have met, the fact that Roger Moore and Sean Connery were in the same picture would have been, you know, and it was always a little fantasy or an ideal years ago that I hoped that one day Connery and Moore would be in the same film together. Hopefully their characters meeting, but you know, they'll be in the same film. Of course, it never happened. So that was the aside. But of course, then when they did get to do The Spy Love Me, they had no expense to get it. And we haven't even mentioned Ken Adam, who built the 007 stage at Pinewood.
Yes, I've seen it. Well, from the outside.
Yeah, and even though it's been burnt down once, twice, and rebuilt, I mean, that has been the stage for the 007 stage at Pinewood to a whole load of films, music videos, the lot. So to make, you know, to get that was incredible, I think. And they even got the former Prime Minister who'd resigned some months previously, Sir Hal Wilson, to open the stage.
Okay.
So, you know, but it was in the Guinness Book of Records, I think at times, the biggest film stage in the world. So, you know, it was a monumental Bond film when it came out in many ways.
Right.
But
it's the stage is very clearly visible from the street outside. It's out in the countryside.
Yes,
but there's a road that goes by. Obviously, goes by it. And,
I've never been to Pinewood, so I've never
on a walk.
Yeah.
I think it has the 007 logo on it.
Yes, it does from what I've seen, yes.
But yeah, it was very exciting when I saw that.
It's always nice when you feel you've walked on what's essentially a Bond film set.
I walked down the same road that Daniel Craig has driven down.
Inspector. So, no, the bit when he crossed over, because, I mean, let's mention very, very briefly, I hasten to add to our viewers, Spectre, and that's the car chasing. The scene when he's running out of the building is Blenheim Palace in Oxfordshire. And that's just down the road from where my family lived in the early 80s.
Okay.
So we used to visit there. I mean, my wife and I were able to take a holiday under pandemic rules to Oxfordshire last summer. We were going to go to France via Switzerland, but unfortunately, you know, so we went to Oxfordshire. So we had another look at Blenheim Palace. So I've seen the car park where Bond runs down, albeit in daylight. And of course, I mean, I've been in Rome and I've been in the Vatican City. So the bit when the cars go around the outskirts of the Vatican City, there is, so the two moments that film on different parts of the European continent where it's like, yeah, I've been there. But it does feel weird. It does feel weird when you see the, you know.
Yeah. Yes, I need to watch Spectre again, but I think I'll wait until September, since No Time to Die, it looks like a kind of a sequel again.
It does.
Well, insofar as Madeline is in it. So it's a carry-on from the last film, from Spectre.
What do you make of, I mean, The Spy Who Loved Me touches on it slightly because of, obviously, it has an element of On Her Majesty's Secret Service in the film. But what do you think of continuity and references to previous Bond films? I
love it when they reference previous films. in my formative years, when I was a teenager, I read a lot of comic books,
Yeah.
Marvel, especially DC as well.
Mm.
Both of them, but I think especially Marvel. They were very hot on continuity.
Yeah.
And when I wrote stories in the style of comic book stories, I followed in that line. And when I watched Bond when I was young, in the 80s, when I was watching Bond, I always wanted more continuity. And it's always a bit, "Oh, they haven't done it. They're not going to do it." So when Daniel Craig came along, and not only did he have continuity, but a direct sequel in Quantum of Solace.
Do you think they overdo it?
No, not for me.
All right.
I mean, I can't get enough of it. I appreciate that's a very personal view. I know that some people, I've seen them on Twitter, who just want a straight down the line adventure, which is equally valid. But I much prefer when it references previous films. So Spectre, is it Spectre or Skyfall that MI6 gets blown up?
Skyfall,
no,
but
in Spectre, he goes in the ruin and sees the pictures of Vesper Lind and the other people. And so even that, I think, is great because it's referencing what's gone before, this great arc that they have for Daniel Craig's character. I kind of wish that they would get new people to write the films now. The two present writers have been doing it for so long, but if they keep the continuity as part of it, then I'm all for that, and let them carry on.
It's a policy Eon seem to have, if it's such a thing as policy. They have an established writer, sometimes working alongside a rookie. Rookie is the wrong word. I mean, experienced in other fields, but new to Bond. So with the forthcoming one, they've got Robert Wade, Neil Purvis, as per usual, but they've also got a couple of others joining, including Phoebe Waller-Bridge had a hand in the script as well. This from the first one, Doctor No, all the way through to and including License to Kill, all the Bond films apart from You Only Live Twice, Live and Let Die, and Moonraker, the screenplay was co-written by Richard Maybaum. Sorry. This one, it was officially, or no, I understand there were a team of writers, Richard Maybaum and Christopher Wood. With Christopher Wood perhaps doing the certain body of it because Christopher Wood did it solo with Moonraker. The other thing is, it was the first Bond film to be just about, I mean, You Only Live Twice isn't far off this, but it was the first Bond film to be completely away from the Fleming thing apart from the title. And the reason was, when Fleming wrote the novel The Spy Who Loved Me, he had such bad reviews and he felt so depressed by it, he said to Eon, and had it down officially, that should there be a dramatization, they were allowed to use the title and the character of Bond, obviously, but they had to make up their own story.
Okay, wow.
So this was like, people complain about not being close to it. This was actually one where Ian Fleming said, no, I actually want you to have it different. So you see it, a Fleming influence all the way posthumously, albeit, rented Roger Moore. However, two assassins in the Fleming novel, one's called Slugsy and the other's called Soul Horror. If I remember good, I've never read the book, but I've heard a bit about it. Slugsy, if that's his name, was a sort of well-built, bald-headed person. Soul Horror was about 7 foot tall with metal teeth. So it's like Cubby Broccoli incorporated at least the two henchmen and gave them different names. Because the physical description is basically them. It is Sandor and Jaws. But other than that, there's no here. I mean, the novel is a female narrator of an ordinary Canadian woman in the wilds of Canada. And it comes in, and Bond comes in about 2/3 of the book, dealing with Spectre. And they did want to they wanted to bring Spectre into this, and I understand Blofeld as well, after an absence of 6 years. But Spectre was tied in with Kevin McClory.
Oh, these are
on
serious
Thunderball.
issues. Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the agreements with Thunderball was Kevin McClory lost the rights to do anything with Thunderball for 10 years.
Right.
Thunderball came out in 1965, this after 75. And Kevin McClory made it very clear and lost his what friendship he had. He lost his friendship with Cubby Broccoli as a result, because he told him bluntly one evening when Cubby Broccoli asked, "Are you plan to do any films ever in the future?" And Kevin McClory went, "Ah, yes, I'm going to be making a remake of Thunderball."
Right.
"Oh, do you have the rights to do it?" "Yes, I let you have them for 10 years, but they've come back to me now, so I'm going to make them." So
Oh,
Kevin
Hollywood.
McClory made sure, no, they weren't going to have Spectre or anything else. So everything had to be rewritten. And the Blofeld's never mentioned by name in the pre-title sequence of Your Eyes Only. But I think that was apparently the Bond producer's way of saying, we don't need Blofeld, we don't need Spectre.
Yeah.
But after McCloy's death, the rights came back to Eon. If they, hoping I'm using the right legal jargon here, if I'm amiss of that, let's put it that, forget what I've just said legally. Let's just say that Eon had a certain allowance over the spectrum in the 60s and the character of Blofeld. The rights for them to do that, the allowance for them to use Spectre and Blofeld are now firmly in Eon's hands. So hence why first opportunity they brought back Spectre and Blofeld, which I think was a slight mistake in that I think they could have done it differently. I don't like the brother aspect and various other things, but don't get me started about what I don't like about Spectre. There are things I like about Spectre, not much, but there are things like, but I know what I don't like, and yeah.
Right. Right. Oh well.
But, yeah.
We'll avoid that one then.
But yeah, so it's The Spy Who Loved Me is a film very rich in Bond history and very rich in not just that, the music and the film and everything. And also, I did things I quickly looked at before we started. 1977 was a very good year in cinema, a very memorable year in cinema.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was Star Wars, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Saturday Night Fever, Bridge Too Far, which we mentioned was also a top film. The Deep With, that was made by the same person as fictionally Peter Benchley, which had the late great Robert Shaw in.
Yeah.
Nestled between two Pink Panther films, Pink Panther Strikes Again, Revenge of the Pink Panther, which were not the best, but were part of a extremely popular franchise.
Yeah.
So 77 was a very good year for cinema. A very memorable year. And The Spy Who Loved Me is among them, definitely. So as I noticed, we've come up to now, I suppose we've got to round up. In conclusion, how would you rate The Spy Who Loved Me, with 10 being top and 1 being bottom?
I would say it's a very easy 7. I might go a bit higher, although there are elements of it that I'm not so fond of. Well, principally, I'm not so fond of the thinness of the story. So when I mark it down, it's mainly for that.
Yes.
But yeah, I would say 7. I don't want to go too high because there are other pictures that deserve that more.
Would it be in your top 10?
Bond quite probably. Yeah, I think it might be in the lower reaches, but it might well be in there. It's a good, pretty solid Bond film that works despite its problems, as you outlined earlier.
Yeah.
It's the story, although thin, is pretty seamless, which is a real achievement for the writers considering the trouble they had. And we get to see some different sides of the character of Bond, a very different Bond girl this time round. We get to see, we get the usual quips. The villain is a bit of a letdown, or the principal villain. But then we have Jaws as well, the creation of a new legend in the Bond universe, the Bondiverse. So yeah, I would rate it a 7.5, somewhere around there. How about you?
Very precise. Well, it's number one on my list of top 10 Bond films. I would give it a 9.
9
out of 10. I wouldn't get, there's even my favorite Bond films, there are moments I don't like.
Yeah.
So, there's I don't think I'd ever go for a Bond film. Oh, 10 out of 10. And I've been apart from License to Kill, I've seen every Bond film as it came out cinema since, including The Living Daylights.
Right.
I've enjoyed them all to varying degrees. Very rarely have I left going, that's a classic. That is a top tier classic Bond film. The only two I have was GoldenEye Casino Royale, which says something about Martin Campbell, who directed both. Skyfall came a close third. I left Skyfall thinking that's Daniel Craig's Goldfinger, that's Daniel Craig's The Spy Who Loved Me.
Right.
There's something about for Bond films. Well, no, I'm not a fan of Goldfinger, believe it or not. There are moments in Goldfinger I love, like obviously the tables and the laser scene and the golf scene. And I do love the Aston Martin DB5, but I'm not a bigger fan of Goldfinger as a lot of people are, and I sometimes wonder if there's something wrong with me. But I realise one of the great things, and since the start of lockdown and watching other Bond fans, they've all mentioned a Bond film that's fairly popular in some people's eyes that they're like, well, actually, I don't like that, and I end up questioning myself. Well, with me, it's Goldfinger.
I'll say this, that I was writing a post on my blog the other day, and I noted about or mentioned about the Bond fandom, as I know it on Twitter, is one of the most respectful places or fandoms that I've seen for anything.
I've got a theory about that. If you continue, and I'll tell you my theory as to why.
I don't really mix with many fandoms, not even for Alexander the Great. But I've heard stories about Doctor Who, Middle Earth, Harry Potter, blah, 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 blah. Unfortunately, toxic elements. I'm sure there are Bond fans who are idiots, but I've yet to see any trouble online to do with them, or people refer to trouble. It's amazing. And I've kind of had my fingers burnt once with a fandom, and that was Catholic Twitter, unfortunately, which really was a hand-burning experience. But with Bond, somehow, a lot more mature people.
I think there are a number of reasons. I would say it's because you don't have such a wide variety of stuff within the franchise. It's the books and the films, and occasionally the video games, and occasionally the dramatizations on BBC Radio 4 that they're allowed to, being graciously allowed to do. But even then, you've got little fandom elsewhere. But I mean, David Zaritsky put forward an interesting theory about Bond films. Bond films are like pizza and sex.
Okay.
Even when they're bad, they're good. And
okay.
Yes, which
I hope we never get pineapples in James Bond films.
Let's not go down that route. I could see various areas that route will go down. Let's avoid it. But it's I know what he means by that. It's even in the Bond films we really don't like as individuals. There are moments in it that we're like, yeah, it's good. I like that.
Yeah.
I mean, recently, again, Kelvin Dyson did a review of Never Say Never Again. A film he is on the record as saying, I do not like this Bond film. He loves Fatima Blush.
Right.
As a Bond, as a Bond villain, as character. So, there's something we like in all the Bond films, even
Sure.
ones we don't like.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't Casino. I will flat out be highly critical of the spoof version of Casino Royale,
Right. Yeah.
but I will give some praise to Peter Sellers in the way he played in that his decision to play Evelyn Tremble straight. And that's taken into account Peter Sellers behaved badly on that film. He walked out and caused problems. I think, Burt Bacharach does very good music. I don't think it's good music for a Bond film, but he did good music. Burt Bacharach does good music, full stop. So there's always something, in a
Yeah.
Bond film that you can go, well, I like that, and I like that. I don't know.
Sure.
And that's probably partly why fandom is so graceful. And what there is about Bond and what the story of Bond himself is pretty much almost set in stone compared to other genres. You can make up all kinds of things with the Doctor in Doctor Who, much to my irritation and much to everyone else's. You can play fast and loose with it, the character of the Doctor. But you can't really do that much with Bond. It's pretty much set. So I think there's a certain limitation in Bond. And at the same time, there's something in Bond films, even the things you don't like, there's something you like about them. So there is a point of reference between fans, and I think that's partly why there's a fair degree of graciousness between them. And so that's that. I think this is one of the longest reviews we've done. It's 1 hour 8 minutes.
Getting there.
So if those of you who've been watching or even listening still haven't been fed up with us and are still with us, thank you, much appreciated. We hope we've entertained you. No one's dropped by for any questions, but it's been good. I could talk about The Spy Who Loved Me all evening. As I said, it's my favorite one for emotional reasons. It was the first Bond film I came across, and I think it hits so many. And we all loved Roger Moore. We all thought he was great in varying degrees, and I'm still, I think I realised how much I had a high regard for him when he responded to one of my tweets.
Yes.
I'm how it's like with Twitter. Occasionally, a famous person will respond to something you say to them, and I was a bit blasé about that, but only twice was I like, almost like and one was Brian May of Queen, who responded to a tweet asked about the Queen's last tour of Freddie Mercury, and Roger Moore responded to a question I asked about his book about other actors. Lovely. And I said, what's it about, if you don't mind me asking? And he replied, oh, just the usual lies. So
oh, Paul.
But I know, but there's that, and then there's like, Roger Moore's responded to one of my tweets. I was just like, so yeah, I realized a bit, thankfully, when he was still alive, but I think I kind of realized he was one of my favorite actors. I had a really high regard for him. So there's him and the film and everything. So I could talk about this all day. I mean, but I'm glad you've put up with my love of the film, and you got to watch it. And thank you so much for your contribution.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
And thank you all for watching. And hope you'll join us soon. We have agreed to go away from Bond and discuss Alexander, isn't it?
Yes, Oliver Stone's Alexander. The film exists in different formats.
Yes.
The one I have is Alexander Revisited.
Oh, right.
But obviously they're the same picture, just of different lengths and different edits. So, but yeah, Alexander Revisited. But I'm always up for another Bond film, before or after. I don't mind.
Yes. Oh well, all the best.